as a human, we all crave things that are made by hand. I think that the draw is pretty obvious. I mean, it smells good. It's working with your hands. It's working with typography in such a tactile way. How could you not love it?
One day, an older printer, someone about 20 years older than me, needed a printing press moved. And when I moved the printing press with a crew of other people, he sort of reached out and said, "You seem interested. Would you like to meet at my studio and spend some time with a press?"
I was actually introduced to Letterpress in a very roundabout way by seeing CD packaging and music packaging in general in the mid-90s. I was just drawn to the tactile nature of it, and in a roundabout fashion discovered that it was letterpress printed and realized I needed to figure out what that meant.
I was working with a print broker at the time, and I was like, how the hell are we going to print on a pre-printed business card? She's like, oh, you just need a hand-fed letterpress. And I went, okay, what's that?
And, this was a shop that the man was retiring, and he was in his late 80s, and he was finally getting out of print. He said, well, that's a letterpress. And the whole shop was full of them, but this one was running. And I said, I have to have that too. I have to have that too. I fell in love right at first sight. I drove that thing home and just started working on it right away.
What challenged me the most when I first started out was that I didn't know how to make my life easier. Wash up the tanking the ink off the press took a long time. I remember one day it took me 45 minutes and I thought, how am I going to do this between every ink color? This isn't really feasible. I had to just make every mistake and learn how to do better the next time.
I just remember owning a press for a couple of years, not having any tools to run it, and just walking up to it and printing it from time to time and just seeing what it made. And then 2 years later, I finally got tools. Someone like Tom Parson or someone would have been like, Rick, you don't have any tools for your press. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't even know what I'm doing. And they would give me tools, or they would give me type, and it would advance me as a printer.
I think that the most valuable lessons I learned were from just going and being with other printers and observing the way that they were running their presses and the way that they were putting their gauge pins in and just simple things like that I never learned the basic skills. I was trying to figure it out as I went.
When I first started, the letterpress community was very old, very retired, very white male, pretty cranky, but not entirely. And there were a few of these guys that were very open to helping me, and that was enough to get me started.
The first time that I walked into Hat Show Print, all of this equipment was old. The people that were working there were young. I remember they were listening to the Shins and dancing around, and there was something about the energy of working in this old antique process, but with something that felt fresh and relevant.
It's a huge range in terms of generational connection.
Those divisions aren't really important anymore. Letterpress printers are so generous with sharing their knowledge, helping each other get these print presses working, and passing on these traditions. I don't know what makes that so, but the more generosity and good spirit there is, the more people seem to want to join that community.
Walking into a print shop and say, hey man, I'm doing this, can you show me around your shop? And most people, they'll get a feel of you and they're just like, yeah, sure, come on in.
You can't go to school for this anymore necessarily, and so we need each other. It's really a strong community based on our desire of mutual survival.
Collecting type and collecting equipment, you start to realize that this type has history.
letterpress printing is this connection through time. We're using the same physical elements, the physical type that was used for hundreds of years in some cases. A graduate advisor of mine introduced me to the concept that history isn't linear. It's a series of connections through people through time.
You know, so much of this equipment that changed the world is destined or was destined for the scrapyard. So the more of us that get into it, the less of that there is.
Collecting letterpress type and equipment is its own adventure. I've pulled a press out of a barn where someone had field dressed a deer. So there was a deer carcass hanging from this press.
Letterpress has been around for 500 years. To me, that's encouraging that it's not going anywhere. You know, it's a persistent technology, and the machines are built to last, and so will probably outlast all of us.
The speed that letterpress works at changes every part of you. It changes your attention. It changes your connection to what emerges from that practice, from that moment. Very often punctuate, rewrite, annotate on the press, like while the project is live.
I think the set parameters of my press is only this big, and I only have these fonts. It starts immediately with these certain limitations.
Thinking through all your materials and how they'll play with each other, when you introduce that art, how they'll play with each other, is all pretty critical.
I think some of those things add a uniqueness that I know I could never achieve on the computer.
Instead, I have to look at this finite collection of materials and say, how do I turn this little pile of something into something much bigger than what it looks like right in front of me?
Once you learn how to print, you can get going making impressions pretty quickly. And it's figuring out what's worth saying, what's worth spending this time locking up and inking up and getting a good impression. What is it that you really want to produce?
The press is powerful, and you can apply any amount of human labor to it you want to make it more powerful. It's a perfect tool. It's like a hammer with words.
You can promote voices that are outside of the mainstream of voices. You're owning that means of production, and so it was very natural for women to get involved with this. Women are at the forefront of the wedding industry as well, and so it was natural for women to take over with social stationery. So it's really not surprising to me. Women are at the forefront of work in book arts as well, and letterpress plays a huge role in the book arts field. It's all right there. It's in front of everybody. So it's just only a matter of getting the voices out there on a larger scale.
When I was thinking about what I wanted to print for field notes, I had a hard time at first thinking about what was important enough to be put on paper and be put in front of people. And so I was trying to think about how these books would be used. People take notes and kind of tuck them away and hide them away and collect these notebooks. But a lot of people, probably through just fear basically, are scared to put things out in the world. And so I thought maybe I could have a message for those people to encourage them to do something with the things they put down in their notebook.
I started thinking about how I was going to compose the field notes cover based on the theme of the United States of letterpress. I've always loved this idea of we're not as beautiful as individuals as we are when we're all together.
This project represents 10 different aspects of my life and how they're connected to the city and my history with the studio and typography in general. And so each of these prints pulls out these different aspects and combines them. And is also some of the hardest, both physically and emotionally, the hardest printing that I've done.
My dad makes type, and he calls his wood type ornaments printer candy. So I highlighted the printer candy from my collection as a part of my field notes design. It was very important to me to have this connection to my dad be a part of my piece, because he's always inspired me creatively.
So we decided, because the palette that was given to us was a blue and a red, that's a great place to play around with 3D. So if you have a pair of 3D glasses and you put them on, you'll see some of the things on our design pop.
Ethan and I kicked around some ideas, and I was like, well, we could make it kind of like a passport. The idea of the United States as a concept of the unity of the many different states of being that exist among humans. This also tied to the idea that there are several different ways for letterpress printers to operate and practice their trade.
I would say one of my favorite things about having a print shop is having a print shop. The fact that I have a press and that I have type that I can use every time the phone rings to work on a new project, I'm so thankful to make a living doing what I love.
I'm just so thrilled to be a designer, and I'm so thrilled to be the designer I want to be, the one that I discovered along the way, the one that I'm evolving into.
People come from all sorts of backgrounds when they're getting into letterpress. They come obviously from graphic design backgrounds and literature backgrounds. A lot of people come from having worked with a letterpress printer. Everybody, 201, is passionate about it. Nobody makes you be a letterpress printer anymore. You've got to really want it.